At my granddaughter's wedding, the name tag they handed me didn't say Eleanor Hart. It said, "The old lady paying for everything." I did not take it off. I pinned it, lifted it beside the welcome board with the gold serif date and the ballroom clock behind me, and took a clear photo. Then another with the check-in table, the roster binder, and the staffer's hand still hovering. Context matters when truth is shy. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" she asked, cheeks coloring as she read the tag. "Everything is finally legible," I said. Newport was bright and polished. Inside, the room smelled of peonies and money. By the pastry table, two guests performed kindness loudly and off-tempo. "Did you see her tag?" one said. Vanessa said it was hilarious. "Their personal ATM," the other answered. I caught their reflections in the beveled mirror and took a photo. Their faces soft. My tag sharp, the scripted welcome, Jenna and Caleb behind me. I opened my banking app. Fraud alerts on, daily balances on. Transfers over 200 on. I changed to passwords and added a new authenticator. Trust is warm, but logs are cold. I texted Carter Hale. Name tag says old lady paying for everything. Photos attached. Next step. He replied, "Don't remove. Keep documenting. Call me in the morning." At the check-in table, the young woman said she could print another tag. "Please don't," I said. "Replace the paper and the lesson disappears with it." She nodded. I walked the room. Strangers reveal truth faster than family. Miles, my grandson, met me near the windows. "Do you want me to say something?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "Tonight is for collecting. Tomorrow is for filing." He looked at my hands. "Steady." He nodded. Toasts began. Vanessa took the microphone, palm at her collarbone. "What a beautiful day. Family is everything. And speaking of everything, let's thank the woman with the biggest heart and the deepest pockets." She turned to me. Applause for Eleanor, who will also be sending our newlyweds on their dream honeymoon to the Maldives. Silence took the room. I stood. "I don't recall agreeing to fund a Maldives honeymoon," I said. "Announcing other people's money is impolite. Announcing mine is over." Forks found plates. A gasp. A whisper. Miles's mouth drew into a flat line. Jenna looked at me, and I understood her look. Caleb's hand hovered at her back and fell. Vanessa laughed a shade too high. "We discussed it earlier. She said she'd think about it." "I am thinking," I said. "This is me thinking out loud." Ryan arrived with a careful smile. "Mom, don't make a scene." "I'm not making a scene. I'm making a boundary." The band slid into something neutral. The moment broke, but did not heal. I ate my salad. Lemon and a line in the sand. In the corridor, I took another photo, the tag against embossed wallpaper. The brass wall clock reading 9:07 p.m., a dark suit rounded the corner and stopped. "Mrs. Hart." "Eleanor is fine. I'm Carter." We exchanged messages. "Thank you for coming." He looked at the tag and back at me. "Thomas would have called this what it is. Name it," I said. "Names make maps." "Public humiliation," he said. "If they escalate into finances or claim you're slipping undue influence. You don't need the lexicon tonight. You need a plan. Here's the next hour and the next day. Keep the tag on. Photograph it beside fixed references clock, welcome board, seating chart. Ask the event manager who approved the tag text. If they cite an email, request a copy tomorrow. Don't argue or explain. If someone confronts you, note time, place, witnesses. Tomorrow, pull statements. Start a contemporaneous log and record any family meetings they call. If power of attorney comes up, call me immediately. You're doing fine." I exhaled. "That's 5 ways of saying I'm not crazy. It's 5 ways of saying you're competent and documenting," he said. "Competence loves paper." I went back in and enjoyed what was left. I danced once with Caleb's grandfather. I stood next to Jenna while she cut the cake. She leaned to kiss my cheek and whispered that she was sorry about the tag and didn't know. I nodded once to say I had heard Dot. Near the end, Ryan cornered me by the doors. "Vanessa didn't mean to embarrass you," he said. "We're worried." The house is big, stairs, heating bills. That neighborhood had a break-in last month. Downsizing could be safer. Safety is real, I said. So are pretexts. If you were worried about my stairs, you'd offer to change light bulbs, not my address. He lowered his voice. You know, Dad left you comfortable. Why not be generous? It's family. I have been generous for 3 years, I said. Kitchen remodels, tuition cars, family trips where my card was the only adult. You never asked what I wanted because you never planned to hear no. This isn't you. This is me with logs, I said, and with boundaries. You'll get used to both. You looked at my tag. At least take that off. You're making yourself look ridiculous. I'm making you look accurate, I said. You can fix that at any time. I left before midnight. At the valet, I took one last frame. The tag in my palm, the resort logo behind it, harbor lights laid out in rows. In the car, I unpinned the tag and set it on the passenger seat. At home, I slid it into a clear sleeve, labeled it with the date and event, and filed it in a manila folder. Newport Jenna's wedding. I uploaded the photos to a private cloud album and printed for it. On a legal pad, I began a contemporaneous log. 6:12 p.m., check-in table issues tag. Staffer offers replacement. I decline. 7:03 p.m., desert whispers about ATM. Photo of reflections. 8:55 p.m., Vanessa Toast prefaces Maldives announcement. 9:07 p.m., my boundary statement. 9:20 p.m., plan from Carter, documentation, vendor approval trail, statements. Record family meetings, call if POA comes up. My phone buzzed. Vanessa posted a close friend story. A boomerang of the tag in someone's hand with a caption. When the sponsor arrives, I captured a screenshot. A direct message followed from Martha Anderson. For the record, I saw what happened. If you ever need me to confirm what was said, I will. I thanked her. An email arrived from Cliffside Harbor Events, per your inquiry. The name tag copy was submitted by Vanessa Hart and final approved by Ryan Hart at 10:18 a.m. Friday. If you need the proof sheet, we can provide it tomorrow. I had not asked yet. The staffer had. I forwarded the email to Carter and added the screenshots to the album. 2 texts came almost together. Vanessa, let's align on Maldives tomorrow. Rates won't hold. Ryan, let's talk downsizing. Houses too much. We can help. I photographed both and logged the times. I wrote to Carter, vendor confirms approval chain. Close friends post captured. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. still good? He replied, perfect. Proud of you. I turned off the kitchen light and paused at the family photo. Thomas at the center, my hand on his sleeve, Ryan and Jenna and Miles still young. Lakes do evaporate. Trust is warm, but logs are cold. I slept well. Tomorrow would not be kinder. It would be honest, and I do better than hope when I have something sturdier to hold. Proof? The first request came 6 months after Thomas's funeral. Ryan and Vanessa invited me to dinner at a bistro in Providence that Thomas had liked because the soups were honest and the tables didn't wobble. They asked about my sleep and my walks on the river trail, then slid a printout across the bread plate. It was a contractor's estimate for their kitchen. New cabinets, quartz counters, gas line for a range Vanessa had circled in red. I remember the number because it was precise enough to sound reasonable. $29,840 before tax. Ryan said the house would appreciate with a modern kitchen, that it was an investment. That Thomas would have wanted me to support family milestones. I wrote the check at my desk the next morning and logged it in Quicken with a note I thought was harmless at the time. Kitchen refresh gift. I kept the receipt and the thank you text. Gifts become patterns when you label them only once. The second request came dressed as education. Vanessa talked about Jenna's course load and the long commute, how a reliable car would keep her safe and on time for labs. The conversation ended with a dealership photo of a white crossover. I said yes because I was the kind of mother who counted safety before totals. And because Thomas and I had promised each other the children wouldn't drown in tuition. We had meant tuition, not leather seats and panoramic roofs, but words travel when you don't nail them down. The loan office called me for confirmation, and I paid the balance after the trade-in. I logged the payment. 3 months later, it seemed only fair, Ryan said, to do the same for Miles when he turned 18. I agreed, partly out of symmetry and partly because Miles's old sedan coughed in winter like a smoker with regrets. 2 cars in 1 year felt like love efficiently administered. It was also 2 large transfers to accounts I did not control. The third request came wrapped in family. Vanessa found a rental villa on a Florida key with a pool that looked like it had been poured into the shape of a promise. She said we could all be together for a week for the first time since Thomas's service. She booked the place before we discussed how it would be paid, then sent me the confirmation with a row of heart emojis that never knew how to work a calculator. I covered the rental and the flights as a single charge on a card I paid in full every month. The week was in pieces, pleasant. We ate at a dock bar where pelicans waited like clumsy ushers. We took a photo at sunset that made it onto Vanessa's mantle in a driftwood frame. On the last day, Ryan thanked me for making it possible and used the word tradition. Tradition is a door that swings both ways. It can welcome or it can trap. Between those 3 scenes are smaller withdrawals with polite names. A deposit to cover a deposit when a contractor insisted on another deposit. A bridge amount until a bonus cleared. A tuition gap that turned out to include furniture for an off-campus apartment. I never used the word no. I used words like of course and we'll figure it out. The ledger figured it out for me. When I ran a year-end report, the total surprised me enough to print it and keep it in a folder marked Family Support. So, I would not have to lie to myself by calling it something else. I am not foolish about money. Thomas and I built ours slowly. He ran a small manufacturing company that never trended on anyone's feed. And I managed the back office until he could afford an office manager who actually liked spreadsheets. We learned to save by naming each account for what it had to do. Emergency, taxes, roof, retirement. We gave to the church, to the library, to a scholarship in Thomas's father's name. We never gave from guilt. After Thomas died, people told me to be careful. I thought they meant the internet. They also meant holidays and hospital waiting rooms and the kinds of conversations where the word help has a way of joining hands with the word deserve. There were signs I ignored. Once, at a brunch, Vanessa joked that I should get a punch card at the contractor's office, 10th renovation free. Once, Ryan told a friend on speakerphone that he was managing Mom's finances now. And when I raised an eyebrow, he said he meant advising. Once, Jenna thanked me for a gift I hadn't heard about yet, and we discovered that thanking had been scheduled before asking. None of these moments looked like theft. They looked like convenience practiced until it forgot its manners. I kept records because I always have. I kept them because Thomas would have asked to see them and because numbers keep you from telling yourself the version that is easiest to sit with. When Ryan complained about the heating bill in my old Victorian, pulled up last winter's gas statements and showed him that the insulation we installed after Thomas's last winter cut the cost by a third. When Vanessa sent me a link to a senior living complex with a putting green and a cafe called Savory Seasons, I wrote down the date of the link and the sentence that accompanied it. This could solve so much. When the car insurance renewals arrived, I highlighted the discounts we had because I still drove, without accidents, and because I took the defensive driving course. The DMV offers online when it rained for a week, and I ran out of cabinets to organize. Miles noticed what others ignored. He texted to ask if the Florida trip had been restful. I told him the truth. Parts of it, yes. He sent a photo of a bookstore he liked near campus. A place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard that announced free coffee refills and poetry on Thursdays. He said he sometimes helped the owners shelve donations for the community program, and that it felt like stacking a future, where people still turned pages with their hands. I told him Thomas would have approved. Thomas believed in paper as if it were a person worth listening to. If this sounds like a list, it is because lists are what keep stories from becoming fog. I can tell you where the money went because I wrote it down at the time with dates and amounts. Not because I reconstructed it through the filter of an argument. I can tell you which credit card covered the Florida flights, and which account covered the second car, and which contractor cashed the kitchen check on a Thursday. I can tell you that my generosity did not break me because Thomas and I had planned for a future that did not include the word easy. And I can tell you that generosity without boundaries breaks respect faster than it breaks balances. The week before the wedding, Vanessa asked me to approve a mock-up for place cards and menus. I complimented the typography and sent back a note about the color of the fish course. No one sent me a mock-up of the name tags. I did not know that detail would be handled separately. I did not know the approval would be routed through people who used my first name when they wanted warmth and my last name when they wanted access. I learned those facts at the valet stand after the reception when I checked my email and found a message from the resort's events coordinator confirming who had approved what. I filed it because that is what I do when the wind lifts, and papers try to leave the table. On the drive home from the wedding, I thought about Ryan's new line about safety and how it replaced earlier lines about gratitude and tradition. People change their scripts when they feel a door closing. The next morning would be for Carter, for printouts, for the calendar I keep in the kitchen drawer with the rubber bands and the roll of tape that tears clean. I would not call Ryan or Vanessa. I would not argue a single point. I would set the documents in a neat stack and make coffee strong enough to stand a spoon. Then I would tell the truth in the order it happened, with the papers in my hands so the order could not be accused of being personal. That night, after filing the tag and the screenshots and the resort email, I opened the family support folder and added a new sheet at the front with a simple title and 2 columns. On the left, I wrote the date. On the right, I wrote the description the way a clerk would. I did not write how I felt or who cried or what song was playing on a dock under a pink sky. I wrote the parts that hold still when people start moving fast. I closed the folder and put it back in the cabinet, second drawer. Behind the manuals for appliances we no longer owned. When I turned off the kitchen light, the house made its usual settling noises. Old wood answers the night in a language that doesn't ask permission. I stood for a minute in the doorway and listened to the stairs I was supposed to fear, to the furnace that had been serviced in October. To the lock Thomas installed that slides like a well-made sentence. The house has never asked me to be smaller. Other people have, and they tend to start by calling it kindness. In the morning, I woke before the alarm and brewed coffee. I printed the photos from the wedding and the resort email and clipped them to the new sheet. I put my notebook and a black pen in my bag. I checked my phone. There were no new messages from Ryan or Vanessa. There was one from Miles. Love you. Call me after your meeting. Put the phone face down and watch the steam rise from the cup until it thinned into a line I could step over. Then I stepped. I met Carter at 10 at his office on South Main. He had a printout of my email, a yellow legal pad, and a manila envelope he placed on the table without opening. He asked me to walk him through the sequence in order. I used the notebook I had started the night before and read the times as I had logged them. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he turned the envelope so the clasp faced me. Thomas had asked him to hold a codicil. Carter said Thomas wanted it used only if I was publicly humiliated, or if someone tried to control my finances against my wishes. Carter slid the document across and let me read it alone. The language was clear. Any descendant who publicly humiliates the surviving spouse or attempts to assert control over her finances without her consent forfeits his or her share of the estate held under the will. The executor is authorized to determine whether conditions have been met, relying on contemporaneous documentation and third-party accounts. Carter said Thomas had signed it a month before his final hospital stay. Thomas had not told me because he wanted good behavior to be the choice, not a fear response. Carter had told him he would respect that. We reviewed what counted as proof. The photos of the tag with fixed time and place. The video of the toast, if any guest had recorded the close friends post Vanessa had made. The email from the resort confirming who had approved the name tag text. The texts about Maldives and downsizing. He asked me to forward originals, not screenshots when possible. I handed him a USB drive with the files and the cloud link. He printed the email headers and clipped them to my log. He asked for the tag itself. I had brought it in a sleeve. He photographed it next to the day's newspaper and returned it to me. We discussed next steps. He would request the proof sheet and approval emails from the resort and vendors. He would draft a simple preservation notice to Ryan and Vanessa, quote, instructing them not to delete social posts or messages related to the wedding and finances. He recommended I send a calm email tonight to Ryan and Vanessa, memorializing the Maldives announcement and my response. Without adjectives, using timestamps and names of witnesses. He suggested I do the same for the conversation about downsizing at the wedding and any prior conversations about my house. He advised that I not record any conversations without first confirming what the law permits. He said that if they convened any family meetings, I should ask to meet at his office or to have a neutral third party present, and to follow up with written summaries. We reviewed banking. Alerts were in place. He advised that I ask my banks to note no third-party access without a written request from me to the branch manager, and to ensure no view-only logins had been extended to Ryan in the past. I said none had. He advised I move nothing and close nothing for now. He warned against joint accounts with adult children and confirmed I had none. We reviewed the house. He said to ignore any listings or brochures sent by Ryan or Vanessa and to keep any links or messages they sent with dates. He noted that the line about safety could become a pretext for capacity arguments later. He told me not to engage on capacity at all, only to document. He said he had seen people test the idea with language, like "we're concerned and we just want to help." He said the correct response was to say that I am managing my affairs and that I will consult my attorney if I need assistance. Nothing more. He asked about Jenna and Miles. I told him what Jenna had whispered and how Miles had behaved. He said to keep them out of legal correspondence and to avoid triangulating through them. If Jenna reached out, I could answer as a grandmother. If she asked about money, I should say I am taking time to review things. He opened the manila folder and showed me a template for a contemporaneous log he uses with clients who are documenting patterns. Date, time, location, who was present, what was said or done, documents created. He suggested I add a column for follow-up, like emails sent, vendor reply, witness, willing. He gave me a clean copy and I copied my notes over in ink while we sat. He watched me write and nodded when I kept each entry to a few lines. He asked for a short timeline of the 3 years of support I had described. I gave him the kitchen check number and date, the 2 car purchases with VANGs and payoff confirmations, the Florida rental invoice and airline charges, and smaller transfers labeled family support with dates. He made photocopies of the receipts and put them behind a tab. He did not comment on any number. He does not practice commentary. He practices paper. He called the events manager at the resort while I was there and confirmed the proof sheet would be ready by noon. He asked the manager to bring the roster binder so we could photograph the page where the tag text had been entered. The manager said the request had come from Vanessa by email and was approved by Ryan. In a reply that had included the phrase "keep it fun," Carter asked for both emails in PDF with headers. The manager agreed and sent a calendar invite for noon. I left his office at 11 with a copy of the codicil, my log, and a list of tasks. On the sidewalk, I called my bank and requested that any requests regarding my accounts be flagged. And that branch staff note in my profile that I do not authorize anyone to speak on my behalf. I asked for written confirmation. I drove to the resort and waited in the lobby cafe with a black coffee and my notebook. At noon, the events manager arrived with a slim binder and a folder. We sat at a corner table near the window. She was professional and direct. She said she was sorry about the tag. She handed me printouts of the email thread with names, times, and IP note lines. She opened the binder to a page labeled name badges, special notes, and showed me the handwritten instruction. The handwriting did not matter. The source email did. I photographed the page with the date and page number visible and the binder's cover partly in frame. I thanked her for the materials. She said she had also exported the guest photo gallery from the photographer's portal for the window from 8 45 to 9:15, and that a staff camera on the back wall would show the toast. She would send those files to Carter by secure link. I thanked her again. We shook hands and she left. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Thank you for standing up for yourself last night. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Can I see you later this week? Just us." I took a screenshot, not as evidence against her, but to keep the order of events clean. I wrote back that we could have lunch on Friday at the small place near the library. She sent a heart. I logged the exchange and left it there. I drove home and set the new documents in the folder. I wrote the memorializing emails to Ryan and Vanessa and kept them flat. At 9:07 p.m. during the reception at Cliffside Harbor, Vanessa announced from the microphone that I would be paying for a Maldives honeymoon for Jenna and Caleb. I stated that I had not agreed to fund that trip and that announcing other people's money is impolite. I attached the resort's confirmation of who approved the name tag text used for my badge and the photo of the tag taken at check-in. I do not consent to any announcements or commitments in my name. I sent separate emails to each of them with the same body and individual subjects. I blind copied Carter. Carter replied that the proofs and vendor emails had arrived and were saved. He said the staff camera captured the toast audio clearly. He said the preservation notice would go out by courier in the morning. He advised no further contact tonight. I made dinner and reviewed the list again. Alerts in place. Bank flags requested. Vendor proofs obtained. Memorializing emails sent. Log updated. I pulled the file for my house and checked the last appraisal and the insurance policy. I added a copy of the furnace service ticket and the stair inspection I had done after Thomas's fall 5 years ago. If safety came up again, the paper would answer. I did not plan to argue with anyone about it. At 9, a message arrived from Ryan. "We should meet this weekend. We can bring a planner from the senior community to show options." He included a brochure and a link. I replied with one sentence. "I am not interested in senior housing. My home is not for sale. If you have concerns, direct them to my attorney." I copied Carter and logged the time. Vanessa sent a paragraph about rates for the Maldives package and how vendors needed deposits. I replied that I would not be paying for that trip and that any commitments should be canceled or handled by the couple. I copied Carter and logged the time. I printed the new emails and clipped them in the folder. I put the folder back in the cabinet. I checked my phone one last time. Miles had written earlier asking how the meeting went. I wrote back that it went as planned and that I would call him tomorrow. I set the phone face down, turned off the kitchen light, and let the house settle. In the morning, I would start a separate binder with tabs for wedding, housing, vehicles, and transfers. I would ask my primary care office for a letter stating that I am oriented and managing my affairs, and I would file it without sending it to anyone. I would avoid debates, avoid explanations, and write things down. I would keep my schedule and go to the market and pay my own bills as I have always done. The next move did not belong to me. It belonged to the people who had written a joke on a piece of paper and pinned it on me in public. I had given the joke a file number. Ryan proposed a family meeting for Saturday at noon at my house. I replied that any meeting about my finances or housing would be held at Carter's office on South Main, during business hours with a third party present and written notes afterward. He said weekends were easier. I repeated the location and the condition. He sent a thumbs up emoji that did not specify acceptance. I printed the exchange and logged the time. Friday, I met Jenna for lunch at the small place near the library. She arrived without Vanessa and without a script. She asked how I was sleeping. I told her I sleep better when paper is in order. She said she had asked the photographer to send me the gallery link and that she would not share any more funny posts and family chats. I thanked her. She asked if she and Caleb could stop by next week to bring leftover favors. I said yes, Wednesday at 4. We paid separately. I logged the meeting as family contact. No finance discussion requested or permitted. At the bank, I confirmed the flags on my profile. The branch manager printed a note for the file stating that no one is authorized to access my accounts or speak on my behalf, and that any attempt be escalated to the manager before action. I signed and dated the note. She countersigned and scanned it into the profile. I asked for a copy from my binder. She made two. I placed one behind the banking tab and one behind the housing tab. Because money and home collect. It's the same kinds of stories if you let them. My primary care office scheduled a brief appointment for the following week. The nurse practitioner would document that I am oriented, independent in activities of daily living and managing my affairs. I requested a single-page letter on letterhead. I told them I did not want it sent to anyone. It was for my file. The nurse said that was fine. I logged the date and time. Saturday at 11:50, a doorbell camera alert showed Vanessa's SUV at my curb. I opened the front door but kept the glass storm door latched. Ryan and Vanessa stood on the porch with a folder and smiles. Ryan said they were 5 minutes early and asked if I had coffee. I said the meeting was at Carter's office during business hours. He said the weekend was the only time he could get Vanessa. I repeated the location. Vanessa lifted the folder and said they had materials for me to review. I asked what they were. She said floor plans for a senior community and a packet on power of attorney to reduce stress. I said I do not consent to a power of attorney, and my home is not for sale. Ryan asked if we could talk inside to avoid the neighbors. I said the neighbors were not my concern and that I would not discuss legal or financial topics on my porch. He asked if I could at least look at the floor plans. I said that if he insisted on presenting them, he could email PDFs to my attorney. He said he wanted an honest conversation without lawyers. I said honest conversations keep records. He said I sounded rehearsed. I said I sounded consistent. Vanessa said this was breaking his heart and that Thomas would be ashamed of me. I did not respond to that sentence. I said the meeting was over. I asked them to leave. They did not move. My neighbor across the street, Linda Gates, walked down her steps with a grocery tote and waved. She asked if everything was okay. I said we were finished and that Ryan and Vanessa were just leaving. Ryan said we were in the middle of a private family matter. Linda said she would wait until the walkway cleared. Ryan looked at the camera lens. Vanessa slid the folder under the storm door with the toe of her shoe. I let it sit on the mat. I said I would not accept unsolicited paper and that anything they wished to send should go to Carter. Ryan said I was being difficult. I said I was being clear. He said they would try again later this afternoon when I had calmed down. I said attempts to enter or confront me again today would be unwelcome and documented. He said he didn't like threats. I said I was stating boundaries. They stepped back. I closed the main door and watched them from the hallway window as they spoke with Linda for a moment and then left. I forwarded the doorbell footage to Carter with a brief note. Attempted porch meeting. Whole brochure visible. Refusal recorded. Witness present. He replied that the preservation notice had been delivered the day before at 4:12, and that a second notice referencing today's doorstep visit would go out Monday. He asked me not to open the folder and to photograph it sealed. I had already done so. He said a courier would collect it for chain of custody. Storage. At 2 o'clock, my phone chimed with a calendar invite from Ryan titled Family Check-in at Mom's with a Google Meet link in the description. I declined and added a note that all meetings must be scheduled through counsel and held at counsel's office. I sent the same note by email to both of them and blind copied Carter. He acknowledged receipt and suggested I memorialize the porch exchange in one email. Bullet points only, no adjectives. I wrote it and sent it. The courier arrived at 3:30. I photographed the envelope transfer on my porch, had the courier sign a receipt, and saved it. The chain of custody number went into my log. I wiped my mat and put the storm door bolt through. Sunday morning, a message from Vanessa arrived with an attachment titled Support Plan and a note that read, "Let's take the emotion out of this and look at numbers." The attachment proposed that I transfer monthly funds to an account Ryan would manage to simplify my bills. It listed a stipend for me and larger amounts for family obligations, including a line for future grandchildren. It also included a screenshot of my house from a real estate site with a suggested listing price and a proposed commission discount through a friend. I replied with a single sentence: I will not transfer funds or delegate management of my accounts, and my house is not for sale. I copied Carter and logged the time. He wrote back that the attachment would be printed and added to the file. Before lunch, I met Miles at a coffee shop on Weekenden. He asked if they had come by the house. I said they had and that a courier had collected the folder. He asked if I wanted him present for any conversations. I said his presence would turn him into a witness and that I preferred to keep him out of it. He said he understood. He showed me a draft business plan he had been working on for a small bookstore cafe. It had realistic rent, conservative margins, and volunteer programs tied to literacy. He asked for feedback on the cash flow section. I suggested he remove the assumption of unpaid labor and add a reserve line for equipment repairs. He said he would revise. I told him to set his plan aside for now if anything with the family became noisy. He said he wouldn't bring it up with them. We drank coffee and walked the block once. He went back to campus. I went home and updated the binder. Monday, Carter sent me PDFs from the resort, the proof sheet for badges, the email thread showing Vanessa submitting text and Ryan approving with "Keep it fun," the roster page, and the still frame from the staff camera at 9:07 p.m. with Vanessa at the mic and me standing. He said the audio was clear and that he had a transcript service producing a verbatim line for the file. He asked if I had received any further contact about housing or accounts. I forwarded Vanessa's support plan and Ryan's calendar invites. He added them to the timeline and noted pretext language: safety, simplicity, alignment. A letter from my primary care office arrived by portal. Patient is oriented X3. Independent in ADLs and IADLs, manages medications and finances. No cognitive concerns at this time. I downloaded it, printed it, and placed it behind a medical tab. I did not send it to anyone. Carter had not asked for it. It existed for the day someone might try the word capacity as if it were a door they owned. In the afternoon, Ryan called twice. I let both go to voicemail. He left one message that began with "We love you" and drifted into this: "It's unsustainable," and ended with "We need to take this off your plate." I saved the voicemail and requested a transcript from my carrier. Vanessa texted a link to a Maldives package one more time with a line about deposit deadlines. I replied that I would not be paying for that trip and that any announcements in my name must be withdrawn. She wrote back that I was humiliating the family. I did not answer. Carter advised silence. Late that day, the resort manager sent a final packet, a vendor sign-off sheet with initials, a floor diagram showing the camera placement, and an access log for the photo gallery. I put the packet into the binder. The binder was now thick enough to sit upright on its own. I made a simple dinner and looked through the housing tab. I added the furnace service ticket, the stair inspection from 5 years ago, the locksmith receipt, and the insulation invoice that reduced the gas bills by a third. Safety claims travel well on air. Paper grounds them. I checked the porch camera before bed. Quiet street. The bolt sat where Thomas had set it years ago. The house answered the night with its usual notes. I turned off the lights, set my phone face down, and let the calendar keep its shape for the morning. Tuesday, I went to the community center and signed up for a 6-week watercolor class. The clerk asked if I wanted mornings or evenings. I chose mornings because light tells the truth better before lunch. I paid the fee with my card and took a receipt for the binder. On the walk home, I stopped by the library and renewed my card, then asked about the small gallery wall. They rotate each quarter. The librarian said submissions open next month. I wrote the date in my notebook. At home, I made a list that did not include Ryan or Vanessa. Groceries, furnace filter, bulbs for the hallway. Call the roofer for the spring check. Find the folder with Thomas's last service records for the car. I did each item and wrote "done" beside it. The house stays honest when you speak to it in verbs. The primary care appointment was short. The nurse practitioner asked me to spell a word backward, draw a clock, name the date, and list the medicines I take. I did each without commentary. She asked if I had help at home. I said I live alone and manage my own affairs. She typed, printed the single-page letter, and handed it to me in a folder. I put it in my bag and thanked her. On the way out, I asked the front desk to note on my chart that I do not authorize anyone to speak on my behalf about medical decisions or appointments. They added the note and printed a copy. I filed it under medical on Wednesday at 4. Jenna arrived with a small box of leftover favors and 2 croissants from a bakery on Hope Street. She stood on the porch until I opened the storm door and then stepped in without looking past me. We sat at the kitchen table. She said she was embarrassed about the toast and that she had not known about the tag. I told her what the events manager had provided and who had approved the tag text. She closed her eyes for a second and then opened them and said she had not seen that email thread. I said I was not asking her to carry it. She asked what she could do. I said she could start by deciding not to be a messenger for anyone. She nodded. She asked if she and Caleb could pay for their own trip and change the destination. I said they could do what they wanted as a couple and that I would be happy to give them a modest gift privately for a shorter trip later. She said thank you and did not ask for a number. When she stood to leave, she hugged me and said Wednesday works for her for future visits because Caleb is on late shift that day. I wrote it down after the door closed. That night, Ryan sent a group text to me, Jenna and Miles, with a photo of a condo brochure, and the line just looking. Nothing decided. Thoughts? I did not respond. Jenna did not respond. Miles replied with a thumbs up icon and nothing else. 2 minutes later, Ryan sent only to me a question mark and then a second text that said, "We need alignment." I replied with the same sentence I had used before. Meetings regarding my finances or housing will be scheduled through council and held at council's office. He did not answer. Thursday morning, the watercolor class began. The instructor asked us to paint something simple with 2 colors. I painted a small harbor with 3 holes and left space for the sky to dry without puddling. The woman beside me said her name was Ruth and that she had taken the class last year after retiring from teaching. We talked about brushes and paperweight and nothing else. After class, I walked to the market and bought lemons, chicken thighs, and coffee. At home, I cooked and set 2 portions aside for the freezer. I updated the binder with the medical letter and the bank flag copy. I looked at the support plan attachment again and saw that it included a line for family obligations without definitions. I printed that page and underlined the phrase once, Friday. I met Miles at the coffee shop on Weekenden with his revised business plan. He had added a repair reserve and removed unpaid labor. He had also added a section on community programming with costs listed and sponsors blank. He asked if I would consider an investment. I said I would consider a loan with terms, collateral on equipment, and a personal guarantee limited to his own assets, not his parents'. He said that sounded fair. I asked for quarterly statements and the right to audit the books once a year. He agreed. I said the loan would be dispersed after he secured a lease with a clause that allowed assignment, after permits, and after he opened a business account separate from his personal accounts. He wrote the conditions down. I said I would not be a silent partner and I would not be an owner. He said he wanted to build the store himself. We agreed to meet with a small business attorney the following week to draft a note. He left with the plan and a list of tasks. I left with a copy for Carter and a note on the timeline. Family support replaced by formal lending when conditions are met. That afternoon, Carter called and asked if there had been any further contact about power of attorney or housing. I said Ryan had sent the condo photo and a text asking for alignment, and that I had replied with the office condition. Carter said a second notice had been delivered and signed for. He asked if I had moved any accounts. I said no. He asked if Jenna had reached out. I said we had had lunch and that she had asked to see me on Wednesdays. He said to keep that separate and out of email threads with Ryan or Vanessa. He said the transcript of the toast was clean and that a copy was in the file. He said the preservation notices covered social posts and DMIs. He told me the resort had delivered the staff camera video, and that the audio captured the Maldives line clearly. I wrote down the file number he gave me. On Saturday morning, a packet arrived by mail from a senior community with a note that said, "We're reserving a slot for you pending family decision." I called the number listed and told the receptionist that there was no family decision, that no one had authority to reserve a slot for me, and that my name should be removed from any list. She said she would flag it. I asked her to email me a confirmation. She did. I forwarded it to Carter. On Sunday, I attended church and sat where I always sit. After the service, the pastor asked if I was well. I said I was and that I was taking a class in cooking for myself and reading more in the evenings. He said there would be a book drive for the library at the shelter and asked if I would help sort donations. I said yes and wrote the date on my calendar. When I got home, I found a message from Vanessa with 3 screenshots of Maldives packages and the line, "Last chance." I replied with one sentence, "I will not pay for that trip." She wrote back, "You are punishing Jenna." I did not answer. I saved the exchange Monday. I met with Carter to sign a simple letter instructing my banks that no joint accounts or co-signers would be opened, and that any requests, purportedly from me by phone, required an in-person verification at the branch with government ID. He said the banks already had strong controls, but that this letter would sit in the file and in my profile notes. We reviewed the binder. He suggested creating a short summary memo at the front with dates and headlines so any third party could follow the pattern in 2 pages. We drafted it together. It began with the wedding, moved through the porch visit, listed the texts and the support plan attachment, and ended with the senior community packet that had used the phrase family decision. He said clarity is a kindness when you need strangers to understand quickly. On Tuesday, I took the bus to the University Business Clinic with Miles and met the attorney who would draft the loan documents. We explained the equipment list, the lease condition, the audit right, the reserve, and the quarterly statements. The attorney said a secured note with a UCC filing would protect the equipment and that a simple covenant package could cover the reporting. He asked if we wanted a clause that prohibited distributions to owners while the loan was outstanding. We said yes. He said he would have drafts by next week. Miles asked about interest. I said prime plus 1.5, interest only for 6 months, then amortized over 4 years. Prepayment allowed without penalty. Miles said that worked. The attorney wrote it all down. That evening, Ryan called and left a voicemail about family, unity, and optics. He said my behavior at the wedding had embarrassed them and that people were talking. He said he would appreciate an apology to Vanessa. I saved the voicemail and requested the transcript. I did not call back. Wednesday, Jenna came by at 4 with a bag of apples and a paperback she had finished. We sat on the porch in the shade because the day was warm. She told me Caleb had found a small bed and breakfast in Vermont for a long weekend. She asked if I would like them to bring me maple candy. I said to bring me nothing and to enjoy their time. She asked if Ryan had been by again. I said he had not and that any meetings would be at Carter's office. She said she did not want to be in the middle. I said then she should not stand in the middle. She nodded and told me a story about a mistake with seating charts that had nothing to do with me. When she left, I noted the visit and nothing else. Thursday, I submitted the form for the library gallery wall. 2 small watercolors, landscapes, title pending. I printed the confirmation and put it in the arts tab. I returned a call from the church about the book drive and confirmed I could help on Saturday. I sent Miles a text asking for a progress note on the lease search. He replied with 2 addresses and an appointment time for Friday to view one of them. I told him to take photos of the electrical panel, the HVAC, and the condition of the floor behind the counter. The week passed without another porch visit. The binder got heavier. The house felt the same under my feet. The watercolor dried without buckling. The calendar kept its shape. When the phone rang, I let unknown numbers go to voicemail. When no numbers arrived with lines I had already answered, I did not repeat myself. When I cooked enough for tomorrow. When I walked with my shoulders down and my step measured. I do not need anyone to agree with the way I do these things. I need them to understand that the way I do them does not change because someone thinks it should. That afternoon, Jenna and Caleb stopped by. They brought me a jar of jam from Vermont with a handwritten label. They did not bring up money. They asked if I had photographs from the family albums they could copy for their new place. I said yes, and took out a box and showed them how the envelopes were ordered. They copied 3 and put everything back where it was. Jenna said Ryan had invited them to dinner on Sunday, and she did not want to talk about my house or my accounts there. She asked if there was a sentence that would close the subject without provoking a fight. I told her to say that I am managing my affairs and that legal questions should be directed to counsel. She wrote it down. Thursday, Ryan. Sent a calendar invite for Sunday lunch at a restaurant near the river with the subject family catch-up. I declined and replied that I am not attending meetings about finances or housing outside counsel's office, and that social meals are not venues for legal conversations. He replied that the lunch was only social. I did not accept. He sent Jenna a separate invite. She did not accept either. Later, Vanessa texted a flyer for a country club brunch. The following week titled Appreciation Brunch and wrote that it would be a chance to thank everyone who made the wedding possible. I wrote back that I would attend as a guest and that I would not participate in any public announcements. She replied with a thumbs up. Miles sent 2 insurance quotes and a revised cash flow. The lease came back executed by the landlord with our edits. We signed, scanned, and sent copies to the attorney. He filed the UCC and emailed the stamped acknowledgement. He said we could fund the loan once the equipment invoices were in and the business bank account letter was uploaded. We went to the bank and opened the account in the store's name with Miles as the only signer. I kept a copy of the bank's letter stating the account title and number. We ordered checks and a deposit stamp. I asked the banker to confirm that no view-only access existed for anyone but Miles. She confirmed. We left with a folder. Friday, the library accepted my 2 watercolors for the next quarter's walls. The email gave a drop-off date and a size limit. I printed it and put it behind Arts. I labeled the pieces and set them on a shelf to dry. I wrote a short card for the gallery with my name and the titles. I did not write a bio. Saturday, I helped sort books at the shelter. We separated adult fiction, nonfiction, and children's titles. I set aside a stack of paperbacks for a small free library the church keeps on the corner. The coordinator thanked me and asked if I could help again next month. I said yes. When I got home, there was a voicemail from Ryan that said the family was disappointed I had not come to lunch and that appearances mattered. He said people were asking questions. He suggested I make a small statement at the appreciation brunch to smooth things over, saved the voicemail and requested a transcript. Sunday, I cooked, walked, and read. I checked the porch camera and the calendar. The week ahead showed the brunch on Wednesday, the class on Thursday, and a meeting at the clinic on Friday to sign the loan. I checked the binder and put a clean sheet at the front for any notes from the brunch. I set out a plain dress and a jacket with pockets deep enough to hold my phone flat. I did not plan to speak at a microphone. I planned to be present, to be still, and to let paper do what paper does when people test lines in public. The lease showing was Friday at 10. The storefront faced a side street off the main avenue, 2 blocks from the bus stop. The landlord unlocked the door and let us walk through without chatter. I checked the electrical panel, the HVAC label, the age of the water heater, the floor behind the counter, the condition of the bathroom door, and the fire exit. Miles measured the back wall for shelves and asked about signage rules. The landlord said exterior signs required a city permit and the Historic District Board signed off on colors. I wrote that down. The rent was within the range in the plan if we negotiated a free month for build-out. The lease draft allowed assignment with written consent not unreasonably withheld. I asked for that clause to say not unreasonably withheld or delayed. The landlord said his attorney could add delayed. We thanked him and left out at the business clinic. The attorney added the lease conditions to the loan checklist and drafted a short email for Miles to send the landlord term. Rent, 1 month abatement. Assignment consent language. Right to cure minor defaults within 10 days. Landlord approval of shelving anchors in advance. And confirmation that the restroom met current code. Miles sent the email. The attorney said he would file the UCC once the purchase order for equipment was signed. That afternoon, a group email arrived from Ryan with the subject family governance. He attached a spreadsheet labeled monthly support flow and a PDF titled durable. Financial power draft. The spreadsheet showed a stipend for me and larger transfers labeled obligations. Groceries pool. grandchild fund, family travel. The draft POA named Ryan as agent and Vanessa as successor. He wrote that this would simplify everything and keep Bill Shocks off my plate. He asked us to respond by end of week with any edits. I replied that I would not be transferring funds, I would not be delegating management of my accounts, and I would not sign a power of attorney. I directed all further proposals to counsel and removed Jenna and Miles from the thread. Carter replied to me that he would handle any follow-up. The bank called on Saturday to confirm a request someone had made to discuss my account history for the past year. The caller asked to verify that I had authorized Ryan Hart to obtain statements for tax planning. I said I had not and that no authorization existed. The branch manager came on the line, apologized for the attempted inquiry, and said the note in my profile had blocked it. I asked for a written confirmation of the attempted inquiry and the denial. She sent it within the hour. I printed it and filed it behind banking.sunday. The pastor left a message on my machine saying, Ryan had asked him to check on me because the family was concerned. He said he was not taking sides and that he was calling to see if I needed anything from the church office. I returned the call and thanked him for checking and said I was well and that I would be at the book drive next weekend. He said he would tell Ryan that I had answered him directly and that the church does not mediate private legal matters. I logged the call. Vanessa posted a photo of a Maldives resort pool with a caption, "Dream delayed, not denied," and a winking face. A mutual acquaintance sent me the screenshot without comment. I saved it. Martha Anderson emailed that if anyone needed a statement about what was said at the toast, she and Bill would provide one. I thanked her and asked her to keep any notes she had of the time and where she was standing. She replied with a short paragraph and times taken from her phone's photo library. I printed it. On Monday, Carter forwarded a courier receipt showing that the preservation notice had been served. Again with additional references to the porch visit, the governance email, and the attempted bank inquiry. He wrote that any deletion or alteration of posts or messages after service would be noted. He asked if I was available to come by Wednesday for an update. I confirmed and put it on my calendar. Miles texted that the landlord had agreed to the abatement, the assignment clause with delayed, and the cure period. He attached a red line of the lease showing the changes. He asked if I could review the insurance requirement paragraph with him. I read it and pointed to the section that required business interruption insurance and named the landlord as an additional insured. I told him to obtain quotes and to make sure the policy didn't require coverage he could not afford in the first quarter. He said he would get quotes from the agent the clinic suggested. Jenna called in the evening. She said Ryan had asked her to forward the governance emailed to me because he thought I might respond more quickly if it came through her. She said she had told him no. She said she would not carry messages. I said that was wise and thanked her for telling me. She asked if she and Caleb could stop by on Wednesday again. I said yes. After 4. Tuesday, the clinic attorney sent draft loan documents, secured promissory note, security agreement, and a simple covenant letter. The note carried prime plus 1.5, interest only for 6 months, then a 4-year term, prepayment permitted. The security agreement listed the equipment and any replacements. The covenant letter required quarterly statements, annual tax returns, and prohibited distributions while the loan was outstanding. I read each document, marked 3 typos, and returned them. The attorney fixed them and sent clean drafts for signature pending the lease. At the watercolor class, we layered a second wash. Ruth showed me a way to lift pigment with a folded tissue to keep the edge clean. We talked about paperweight again, and not about families. I painted 3 small halls and left the sky pale. On the way home, I bought a new furnace filter and replaced it. The old one was dusty but not clogged. I logged the change and the date. When I was done, I read through the housing tab and added an index card with the service intervals for systems. The card sits at the front, so I do not have to sort pages when someone demands to know if I have been careful. Wednesday morning, I met Carter. He had printed the bank's attempted inquiry note and the church message summary and placed them behind new subtabs labeled third-party outreach and attempted access. He said outreach to pastors and neighbors was common and that we would not respond to any narrative but our own. He said the vendor packet from the resort was complete, including the transcript of the toast and the camera stills. He said the codicil does not require a confrontation or a warning. It requires an assessment of conditions. He said that his job as executor was to decide whether the conditions had been met based on documentation and third-party accounts, and that he would not rush that decision. He asked if I had any travel planned. Said no. He said if I did, he would want to know, so documents were not served while I was away. The appreciation brunch was Wednesday at 11 at the country club. I arrived on time, signed the guest list, and took a seat near the back with a clear view of the podium and the exit. I placed my phone on the table face down and kept a pen in my jacket pocket. The room held about 50 people. A server poured coffee. The club manager welcomed everyone and thanked donors by name from a printed sheet. My name was read once with the amount listed as private at request. I wrote down the time he said it. Vanessa took the microphone next. She thanked the florist, the photographer, the band, the planner. She thanked the venue staff. Then she pivoted. She said family made the day possible and that transitions could be complex after a loss. She introduced a guest speaker from a senior living community who would share information about services that reduce stress for older adults. A woman in a blazer stood, waved, and walked toward the podium carrying a trifold brochure. I stood before the woman reached the mic. I said I was leaving and that I had not consented to being included in any presentation about housing or services. I thanked the club manager for the coffee and walked toward the door. The manager met me halfway and asked if everything was all right. I said this was not a venue for my housing and that I had made that clear. He nodded and stepped aside. At the door, I heard Ryan say into a microphone that sometimes people resist change and that safety was love. I did not turn back. In the foyer, I photographed the program listing the guest speaker's name and the line sponsors. It listed Vanessa as event contact. I wrote down the time and the exact phrasing I had heard in the parking lot. I sat in my car and sent an email to the club manager memorializing what had occurred, including the introduction of a senior living representative during an appreciation brunch and my statement that I did not consent. I asked for a copy of any contract or event order that listed the speaker. He replied within minutes with a PDF of the event order showing a line item for speaker. Senior Living Informational Segment, contact Vanessa Hart, and a timestamp change order from the day before. I forwarded the email and the PDF to Carter and added 2 photos to the album: the program and the sign at the ballroom door listing the event name. I drove home, placed a note in the binder under third-party outreach, and made tea. At 1:19 p.m., my phone rang. It was the senior living representative. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message offering to schedule a tour and to discuss floor plans and financing options with family present. I saved the message and requested a transcript. I emailed her office a single line declining contact and requesting deletion of my number from their outreach list. I blind copied Carter. At 3:47 p.m. Ryan called. I answered. He asked why I had made a scene. I said I had left a room where my housing was being discussed without my consent. He said the presentation was general and that I should have listened before deciding. I said my decision had been made and communicated. He said the family was worried about my stairs and about isolation. I said the furnace had been serviced, the stairs had been inspected, and my calendar was full. He said I was being stubborn. I said I was being the owner of my life. He said we needed a power of attorney in place so we could step in when needed. I said no. He said I was forcing him to take steps. I said any steps should go through counsel. He said lawyers make things adversarial. I said paper makes things clear. He ended the call. Jenna texted that she was sorry and that she had not known about the speaker. She said she had left early too. I told her I had already documented the event with the club. She asked if she should send a note to the manager. I said no, that it was not necessary. That evening, the club manager forwarded me a short statement confirming that an outside speaker on senior living had been added to the agenda by the event contact and that I had declined to attend. He attached the contract and the change order. He wrote that the club does not endorse any vendor and that event content is the responsibility of the contracting party. I filed the documents Thursday morning, Vanessa. Sent a message with a link to an article titled "When Parents Refuse Help." She wrote that I should read it and consider the stress I was placing on the family. I replied that I would not discuss my housing and asked that she stop sending links. She wrote back that she was documenting my refusal to engage. I said her documentation should reflect that I had engaged through counsel and through written statements and that I had set conditions for any meetings. I copied Carter. At noon, my doctor's office called to confirm an appointment for next month. The receptionist said someone claiming to be my daughter-in-law had tried to obtain my upcoming dates and to add herself as an emergency contact. The office declined and noted my chart per my earlier instruction. I asked for a written summary of the attempted access. They sent one through the portal. I printed it and filed it under Attempted Access Medical. In the afternoon, Carter called with an update. He had added the brunch event order and the club manager's statement to the file. He had served a notice to the senior living company to preserve any communications referencing me. He had also sent a letter to Ryan and Vanessa reminding them that outreach to my providers and vendors without my consent would be noted as attempts to control my affairs. He asked me to forward the doctor's office summary. I did. He said he planned to wait on a formal codicil determination until we saw whether escalation continued. He told me to keep doing what I was doing and to avoid arguments that drifted into explanation. Friday, I took the bus to the business clinic to sign the loan documents with Miles. We reviewed the note, the security agreement, and the covenant letter again. The attorney explained the filing, the collateral schedule, and the reporting requirements. Miles signed. I signed. The attorney handed us copies and a schedule of payments. We shook hands. We went to the equipment supplier and placed the order for shelving, counter, a small espresso machine, a grinder, and a hand sink. The supplier gave us invoices and an estimated delivery date. We took those to the bank and funded the loan into the business account. The banker printed confirmation. I placed copies in my binder under lending. Saturday, the church book drive ran from 9 to noon. I sorted paperbacks by author and checked spines for mildew. On a break, Linda Gates stopped by with 2 bags of children's books and asked if everything had resolved. I told her that the situation was being handled with paper and that I was fine. She said she had seen a post from Vanessa about honoring elders with better systems and that she had recognized the tone. She asked if I needed anything. I said I needed her to keep living across the street the way she does, with her porch light on a timer and her dog on a leash. She laughed and said that was in her range. I thanked her for coming. Sunday, I stayed home and read. In the afternoon, a notification popped up that my name had been mentioned in a neighborhood app post. A user with an initial and no surname wrote about a family member refusing help and placing everyone at risk. The comments split between advice and judgment. I took screenshots, then messaged the moderator that the post described a private matter and requested removal. The moderator replied that they would review. The post disappeared an hour later. I've filed the screenshots and the moderator's message. Monday at 9, a courier delivered an envelope from a law firm Ryan had used before. Inside was a letter requesting a meeting to discuss a proposed limited power of attorney for bill payment and short-term management during travel or illness. It referenced stress, safety, and best practices. It proposed a meeting at my house next Saturday with a notary. I scanned the letter and forwarded it to Carter. His reply was short: decline. He sent a response to the firm stating that all communications should come through him, that no meeting would occur at my residence, and that any further attempts to arrange a notary without counsel present would be considered an attempt to obtain signature under pressure. Tuesday, I tended watercolor and finished a small harbor scene. Ruth said the sky held. I submitted it to the library per their guidelines. On the way back, I bought groceries and a pack of envelopes. At home, I updated the binder and checked the calendar. The next week held Jenna's Wednesday visit, Miles's first equipment delivery, and no meetings with anyone who used the word governance about my checking account. That evening, Ryan called. I answered. He said the family could not continue like this, and that he expected me to show good faith by signing a limited power of attorney and by agreeing to list the house by summer. I said no. He said I was choosing conflict. I said I was choosing my own signature. He said he would move forward without me. I said that any further attempts to pressure me would be documented. He said I was making him the bad guy. I said he was making his own role. He hung up. I wrote the time in the log and the words he had used. I set the pen down and looked at the binder standing upright on its own. The binder was not an argument. It was a record. Records do not raise their voices. They wait until they are asked to speak. Carter scheduled the meeting for Thursday at 3 in his conference room. He sent a notice to Ryan and Vanessa stating that the agenda was limited to prior outreach and proposals regarding my finances and housing, and that any documents they wished to present must be provided 24 hours in advance. He copied me and asked if I would like Jenna and Miles present. I said yes. He confirmed a court reporter for a clean record. I arrived 10 minutes early with my binder. The reporter set up a small machine and asked us to speak one at a time. Carter placed a stack of exhibits on the table with labels matching my tabs. Ryan and Vanessa came in at 3 on the dot with a man who introduced himself as a notary. Carter told the notary there would be no signatures today and that his services were not needed. The notary left. Carter went over ground rules. No recording other than the reporter. No interruptions. Written exhibits only, marked and numbered. He asked Ryan and Vanessa if they had brought documents in advance. They had not. He said the meeting would proceed with the record we had. He began with a timeline. He stated the wedding date and the issuance of the name tag. He marked photographs of the tag beside fixed references and the email from the resort, confirming who submitted and who approved the text. He marked a transcript of the toast and a still frame from the staff camera at 9:07 p.m. showing the announcement of a Maldives trip. He marked the close friends post, the direct messages, and the preservation notices served thereafter. He moved to the porch visit. He marked doorbell camera stills, showing the folder pushed under the storm door and my refusal. He marked my memorializing email, the courier receipt for chain of custody, and the second preservation notice. He marked the governance email proposing monthly transfers and a draft power of attorney, my response declining, and his letter to their counsel instructing all communications to go through him. He marked the bank's note of an attempted inquiry and the denial under profile flags. He marked the doctor's office summary of attempted access. He marked the club's event order for the appreciation brunch, the program listing a senior living speaker, the manager's statement, and the voicemail from the senior living representative offering tours with family present. He marked the neighborhood, app screenshots, and the moderator's removal message. He marked the letter from Ryan's law firm proposing a limited power of attorney at my home. He marked my primary care letter regarding my orientation and independence, stating that it was for file only and not for distribution. He asked Jenna to confirm whether she had known about the name tag approval or the brunch speaker. She said no. He asked whether she had forwarded any governance proposals on Ryan's behalf. She said no. He asked whether she had used my name to make commitments. She said no. He asked Miles whether he had sought funds without terms or access to my accounts. He said no. Carter then read a paragraph from Thomas's codicil. Any descendant who publicly humiliates the surviving spouse or attempts to assert control over her finances against her wishes forfeits his or her share of the estate held under the will. The executor is authorized to determine whether conditions have been met, relying on contemporaneous documentation and third-party accounts. He looked at Ryan. He asked whether Ryan disputed approving the tag text at the resort. Ryan said the tag was a joke and that I lacked humor. Carter asked if Ryan disputed the approval. Ryan said he had approved the tags and that Vanessa had picked the words. Carter asked if Ryan disputed announcing a Maldives trip without my consent. Ryan said families talk in shorthand and that he had assumed I would agree. Carter asked if Ryan had attempted to obtain account histories from my bank. Ryan said he had tried to see totals to plan taxes. Carter asked if he had authorization. Ryan said he had not thought it was necessary. Carter asked if Ryan had contacted my doctor's office. Ryan said he had asked about appointments because he was concerned. Carter asked if he had authority to be listed as a contact. Ryan said he had expected to be listed as family. Carter turned to Vanessa. He asked if she had submitted the tag text to the resort. She said she had, and that "keep it fun" was the tone of the event. He asked if she had added a senior living speaker to the appreciation brunch. She said she had wanted to provide resources. He asked if she had posted my tag on social media. She said it was a close friend's story and not public. He marked that answer. He asked both of them whether they had proposed a plan under which I would transfer monthly funds to an account Ryan would manage. They said yes. He asked whether they had proposed a power of attorney. They said yes. He asked whether those proposals had been presented after I had said that meetings must occur at counsel's office. They said yes. Carter paused and reviewed his notes. He stated for the record that the codicil did not apply to spouses of descendants because they are not descendants, but that conduct by spouses could be considered in evaluating whether a descendant's actions met the conditions. He stated that the codicil did not require warning and did not require the surviving spouse to confront a descendant before a determination. It required an assessment of the conduct and the documentation. The day after the determination, a letter arrived from the probate clerk confirming that Carter's filing had been recorded and that the codicil was now part of the estate record. I put the letter at the front of the binder. At 10, Ryan called twice and Vanessa once. I did not answer. At 11, a message came from a number I did not recognize. The caller identified himself as an officer performing a wellness check at a family member's request. I asked him to wait on the porch and brought my identification, the primary care letter, and Carter's card to the door. I spoke through the storm door. I confirmed my name and address and showed the letter. He noted the information, said he had no concerns, and left. I logged the time and the badge number from his card. At 1, the electric utility called to confirm that someone had attempted to place a new contact name on my account for convenience. The representative said their system had blocked the change pending verification. I declined the change and asked that a password be added to the account. She gave me a code phrase field. I chose one and wrote it on the index card in the Utilities tab. I requested a note stating that no changes would be processed without the code phrase. She emailed the note. I printed it. Jenna texted that she and Caleb were available Wednesday as usual. I said 4 o'clock was fine. Miles sent 3 photos of shelving installed and a copy of the permit taped in the window. He wrote that the inspector had approved the anchors and the hand sink roughen. I asked for the inspection sheet. He sent it. I printed it and filed it under lending. In the evening, Ryan posted a paragraph on a private family chat about difficult decisions and gratitude owed and how families stand together. He copied a line about how the executor had misunderstood Thomas's intentions. I saved the post. I did not respond. An hour later, one relative asked in the chat whether the tag at the wedding had been meant as a joke. Vanessa answered with the words, "Keep it fun." I saved that. 2. Thursday, the resort events manager emailed again. She said she had received a second request to remove the senior living segment from the event order and to issue a revised invoice that did not mention it. She declined and attached a note documenting the second request. She wrote that she would not correspond further on the subject. I forwarded the email to Carter. He thanked her at noon. My bank's fraud department called to confirm that a person claiming to be my assistant had asked for temporary split view-only access to online banking for reconciliation. The request had been denied and flagged. I asked for the date, time, and callback number used. They provided the log. I asked them to add a note that I have no assistance. They did. I printed the log and stored it under attempted access banking. In the afternoon, an envelope from a law firm different from Ryan's arrived by courier. It enclosed a request for informal mediation with a retired judge to discuss housing and financial governance for the benefit of all parties. Carter replied by email that no mediation would be scheduled and that any legal steps could proceed in the usual forum. He sent me a copy. I added it to the tab marking outreach. Friday, I received a letter from my homeowner's insurance with a copy of my policy declarations page at my request and a note confirming no additional insureds. I placed it behind housing. I walked to the library and noted the small card on the wall where the watercolors would hang the following week. The librarian handed me the schedule for drop-off hours. I put it in my bag. Saturday morning, I found a flyer in my mailbox for a senior housing seminar with a handwritten note. Thought of you. There was no signature. I photographed the flyer and the note and placed them in the folder. I requested the postal carrier to note if any unaddressed bulk seminars were placed in my box. He said it looked like a hand drop and not USPS. I thanked him and logged his name. That afternoon, a packet arrived from the probate court with instructions regarding objections to executor determinations and timelines. I read the page and noted the window for a petition to set aside. I did not mark it on my calendar. Carter would track it. I filed the page in the estate tab. Sunday, Jenna and Caleb invited me to lunch at their apartment. They served soup and bread and showed me the 2 framed photos they had copied from my album. They did not discuss money. We looked at the calendar and picked 2 weekends for a short trip to Vermont in the fall, using their own savings. I said I would contribute a small gift if they chose to stay within a modest budget. They said they would let me know the dates and costs. I wrote nothing down at the table. I logged the visit after I returned home. He asked me if I wished to make a statement. I said that I wished to keep it factual and that I had documented what happened at the wedding and since, and that I did not consent to anyone managing my accounts or housing. He asked me if I wanted him to make a determination. I said yes. He stated his determination. Based on the documented public humiliation at the wedding and the subsequent attempts to control finances, against my stated wishes, the conditions of the codicil had been met with respect to Reinhardt. He stated that Jenna Hart had not engaged in public humiliation or attempts to control, and that the record did not support forfeiture as to her. He stated that Miles Hart had not engaged in such conduct. He stated that the codicil's forfeiture provision applied to the share otherwise distributable to Ryan and that under the will the forfeited share would be distributed, 1/2 to me and 1/2 among the remaining descendants, pro rata unless otherwise directed. He marked the clause describing redistribution. Ryan leaned forward and said he would contest. Carter said he was entitled to counsel and to filing, but that the record was strong and that the standard under the codicil was the executor's determination with documentation and third-party accounts. Carter said a written notice of determination would be served and that any attempt to alter or delete communications after preservation notices would be noted. Vanessa said this was cruel. Carter said the meeting was not about adjectives. It was about documents and a will. He asked if there was anything further germane to the record. Ryan said I had been unstable since Thomas died. Carter asked if Ryan had medical training. Ryan said no. Carter marked the primary care letter regarding my status. He said the meeting was concluded and that the reporter would prepare a transcript. In the hallway, Jenna asked if I needed a ride. I said I had my car. She said she and Caleb would stop by next Wednesday. Miles said he would email me updates on the build-out and the opening schedule. I said to keep his invoices and receipts clean and to number them. He said he would. That evening, Carter sent the written determination by courier and email to Ryan with copies to his prior counsel. He sent me a copy. He included a list of exhibits by number and a 1-page summary. He filed a notice with the probate court to supplement the estate record with the codicil determination and to note the forfeiture and redistribution per the will's terms. Ryan called at 9. I let it go to voicemail. He said I had forced his hand and that he would tell people I was not well. He said that if my house burned down, I would regret not moving. He said words about safety and duty. I saved the voicemail and requested a transcript. I sent it to Carter. He replied with a note that any statements alleging incapacity after receipt of the primary care letter would be preserved and that we would not litigate by message. Jenna texted that she had read the determination and that she needed time to absorb it. She said she wanted to see me next week as usual. I replied that Wednesday at 4 was fine. Miles sent a photo of shelving stacked in the storefront and a caption that said the walls were straight. I wrote back to install the anchors with the specifications the landlord approved and to keep the invoices. Together by vendor. The next morning, a courier brought a letter from Ryan's law firm reserving rights and requesting copies of all exhibits. Carter had already sent a secure link. He forwarded me the letter and said there was nothing for me to do. He said he would expect a cooling period or an escalation attempt and that I should continue to refuse porch visits and direct all contact to counsel for legal matters. I took the binder down and added the determination and the exhibit list at the front. I added the voicemail transcript under outreach. I wrote 2 lines in the log. Determination issued at 3:58 p.m. Forfeiture applied to Ryan. Redistribution per will filed. At noon. I went to the library to drop off my watercolors for the wall. The clerk logged them and gave me a receipt. I kept the receipt in the Arts tab. On the way home, I bought lemons and paper towels. At home, I replaced the furnace filter index card with a cleaner copy because the pencil line had smudged. I put the old card in the recycling bin. In the afternoon, the resort events manager emailed that she had received a call asking if she could revise the event order for the appreciation brunch to remove the senior living segment after the fact. She declined and attached a note to the file documenting the request. She sent me the note. I forwarded it to Carter. In the evening, I made a simple dinner and read. The phone stayed face down. The doorbell camera showed the street as it always does. The binder sat on the table upright without leaning. It contained what it needed to contain. The next entries would come when they came. I would add them in order and keep the dates straight. That is how this would be done. Monday morning, the neighborhood app carried a new post from an anonymous handle about elder care. It invited recommendations for planners who could take over and reduce stress. I took screenshots. Within an hour, a moderator closed the thread. I saved the closure note. At noon, Carter emailed copies of 2 declarations. Bill and Martha Anderson had signed statements about what they saw and heard at the wedding toast, including words used and the timing before 9:10 p.m. He attached their contact information. I've filed the declarations behind the wedding. Tab. In the afternoon, the senior living representative left a voicemail, stating that she had spoken with my family and that she could arrange a tour that week. I sent a short email declining and instructing them not to call again. I copied Carter. He sent a cease contact notice referencing earlier preservation orders. Tuesday, I attended watercolor, finished the harbor piece, and left it to dry flat. Ruth suggested a small show card with a line from the harbor permit notice. I wrote my name and the titles and nothing else. On the way home, I bought staples and printer paper. At home, I replaced the used staple strip and filled the tray. Small supplies prevent stories from stalling. Miles texted that the espresso machine had arrived and that the installer would connect it on Thursday. He asked about signage. I told him to submit the color sample to the historic board and not to order anything until he had approval in writing. He said he would. He sent the draft menu for coffee and pastries. I said to start with fewer items and to add only after a month of cost tracking. He agreed. That evening, Ryan left a voicemail titled Last Attempt. He said if I did not engage, he would go to court for a guardianship petition. He used the word capacity twice. I forwarded the voicemail to Carter. He replied that he would prepare a response and that any petition would meet the primary care letter and the log. He instructed me to continue declining porch visits and to take no calls after 8. Wednesday. Jenna came at 4. She brought a plant for my porch and set it where the afternoon light hits. She said she had spoken with Ryan and told him she would not carry messages. She said she would not be at any meetings except social meals. She asked if she could help bring the watercolors to the library next week. I said yes. She left at 5. I noted the time on the calendar and nothing more. Thursday, the clinic attorney emailed the final signed loan pack and the UCC filing number. He included a checklist of post-funding tasks. Miles sent a photo of the grinder and a receipt. He wrote that the city inspector had closed out the hand sink and the electrical permit and that the sign review was scheduled for Tuesday. I wrote to him to keep a binder at the store with copies of permits, invoices, and bank statements. He started one Friday morning. An email arrived from Ryan's law firm with a notice of intent to challenge the executor's determination and a reservation of rights. Carter replied with the docket number and a note that any filings must be served under the rules. He sent me a copy and wrote that this was expected. He said we would wait. In the afternoon, the bank confirmed in writing that it had blocked a third, attempted inquiry by a person claiming to be my accountant. There was no accountant on file. The bank added a fraud watch flag for 90 days at my request. I noted the date the flag would expire and set a reminder to renew. I printed the notice and filed it. Saturday, I sorted books at the shelter again. Linda Gates brought muffins and asked whether I needed her to write anything about the porch exchange. I said her signature and the doorbell footage already covered it. She asked about the plant on my porch and I said Jenna had brought it. She said that was steady. Sunday, I stayed home and cooked. In the evening, an email from the resort arrived stating that a party had requested removal of my name from the donor banner at the ballroom entry and substitution of family. The resort declined because the invoice had been paid by my check. The manager wrote that the file would remain as issued. I forwarded the email to Carter and filed a copy. Monday, the library received my watercolors. Jenna met me there and carried one. The clerk logged the pieces and placed them on the staging shelf. We left without comment. On the way out, Jenna said she and Caleb had booked a long weekend in Vermont for September and would send the dates. I said to enjoy their plan. She said they would. Tuesday, the historic board met. Miles presented the sign color and font. The board approved with a note about size. He sent me the approval letter. The installer mounted the sign 2 days later. Miles sent a photo of the storefront with the letters straight and the glass clean. He wrote that the equipment was in and that he was hiring 2 part-time baristas. I told him to collect W4 South and I-9 South and to keep copies in a file. He said he would. Wednesday, I met Carter. He handed me a copy of Ryan's notice of intent and the court's acknowledgement. He said there was no hearing date yet. He said we would not engage in messaging and that any social posts would remain in the file. He asked if there had been any more third-party outreach. I gave him the utility, bank, doctor, club, senior living, and neighborhood items. He ordered them on the table and nodded once. On my way home, I bought lemons and a new pen. At the house, I replaced the old pen in the drawer and threw it away. I updated the utilities index card with the code phrase and placed it at the front. I checked the porch camera and the lock. I did not expect visitors. I wrote 2 lines in the log and closed the binder. The binder held the sequence, the words, the times, the names. If more came, it would take them in order. If less came, it would stand where it stood. The court set a status conference for mid-month. Carter attended with the exhibits and a short memorandum summarizing the record. Ryan's counsel asked for continuance and withdrew 2 days later. A new counsel filed a notice and then nothing else. The clerk issued a minute entry noting no motion on file to set aside the determination. Carter sent me a copy. I placed it at the front of the estate tab. The codicil stood where it stood. Carter prepared the redistribution paperwork. He sent notices to the beneficiaries describing the forfeiture of Ryan's share and the allocation under the will. 1/2 of the forfeited share to me, and the other half distributed pro rata among remaining descendants. He attached a schedule with names, percentages, and payment instructions. Jenna acknowledged by return email. Miles did the same. Carter filed receipts when the transfers cleared. He sent me the ledger page showing totals and dates. I filed it at the library. The 2 watercolors went on the wall with a card that listed my name and titles. A slip with the dates of the rotation hung beneath. I noted the pickup date in my calendar. The clerk thanked me for following the size limit. I checked the spacing and left. A week later, the clerk emailed that 1 piece had sold. The library issued a check less the commission. I endorsed it and deposited it. I printed the deposit receipt and kept it in the Arts tab. Miles finished the interior build. The equipment installer tested the machine and grinder. The fire marshal signed off. The sign passed inspection. The business account showed the loan deposit and the equipment outflows. The landlord released the key to the side door. The menu board listed a short list of items. The shelves were stocked with used and new paperbacks, poetry on Thursdays, and a notice for a literacy night. The point-of-sale system printed a clean receipt. We opened on a Saturday at 9 a.m. Miles unlocked the door at 8:55 and put a small chalkboard on the sidewalk. The first sale was a paperback and a drip coffee. He counted the cash drawer at noon and again at close. He logged each shift in a notebook and saved the NWDZ reports in a folder. He sent me a photo of the first receipt, the timestamp legible. I placed a copy behind lending. Jenna and Caleb took their weekend in Vermont and sent 2 photos of a lake and a receipt for a cabin. They paid with their own funds. When they returned, they invited me to lunch and brought maple candy out of habit. I thanked them and placed the receipt they showed me in the binder only as a note to myself that their plan matched their earlier statement a week after the opening. The historic board chair stopped by the shop and checked the sign dimensions and color. He sent a confirmation email to Miles. The city license inspector returned and confirmed the occupancy sign. The health inspector approved the hand sink and cold storage. Copies of all approvals went into the store binder. Miles sent me scans. I printed them and set them under lending in my binder so the files stayed congruent. Ryan sent a single email. Through counsel requesting reconsideration. Carter responded with the record and the standards under the codicil. No further argument arrived. Vanessa posted less on close friends. The neighborhood app stayed quiet. The senior living representative did not call again. The club manager sent a note that the wedding file was closed. I finished the watercolor class and signed up for another block. Ruth asked about a brush size, and we compared notes. The librarian set a date for the next rotation and asked if I would submit to more pieces. I said yes. I made a list of materials and purchased paper and a small set of tubes. Receipts went into the arts tab. The bank confirmed that the fraud flag had been renewed. The utility code phrase worked when I called to change the email address on file to a neutral address that only I check. I replaced the furnace filter according to the index card. The roofer scheduled the spring inspection. The locksmith replaced the back door strike plate. I kept every invoice. Carter closed the loop on the estate correspondence. He sent a final letter to Ryan stating that the determination remained in force and that the redistribution had been executed. He noted that any further contact regarding my accounts or housing must come through him. He copied me. I placed the letter behind the estate tab and wrote one line in the log. Miles asked for a check of the first month's numbers. We sat at the back table after close with a printed P&L and the PO's export. Sales were modest and expenses were in range. The reserve line covered a grinder repair and a sink part. He had 2 part-time employees and their paperwork sat in a file with W4 South and I-9 South. He had registered for sales tax and filed the first return on time. We checked the bank reconciliation and the outstanding invoices. He paid to vendors and set a calendar reminder for payroll tax deposits. I initialed the reconciliation and kept a copy of the P&L. In the lending tab, Jenna asked if she could set a small book club at the shop for a quiet evening. Miles said yes and set a limit for chairs. The club met on a Thursday. They read a short novel, bought coffee, and left the space clean. The shop record showed a small uptick for the hour. Miles put the report in his store binder and sent me a copy. The porch stayed quiet. No flyers appeared with handwriting. Linda Gates waved when she took out her trash and kept her porch light on a timer. The church posted the date for the next book sort. I circled it. The calendar kept its shape. The library check cleared. I entered it in my register and wrote "sold" next to the title in my notebook. The second piece stayed on the wall until the rotation ended. I picked it up on the date on the slip and signed the pickup log. Carter called once to ask if any new outreach had occurred. I said no. He said the docket showed no motion filed by Ryan and that the time for the most likely challenge had lapsed. He wrote a short memo for the estate file and sent me a copy. I put it in the estate tab. He told me to keep doing as I have been doing. I replaced a light bulb on the stair landing. I marked the date on the index card. The handrail stayed firm. The lock slid as it always has. The furnace cycled in its normal way. The yard service left a note about spring cleanup. I put the date on the calendar at the shop. Miles installed a small free library box by the door with the landlord's consent. He stocked it with paperbacks from the shelter sort. A child took one book and left a drawing. Miles taped the drawing on the office wall. He balanced the drawer and locked the back door. He made a list for the morning and left at closing time. He sent me the usual end-of-day note. I read it and wrote back one sentence about keeping the receipts in order. Jenna sent a text on Wednesday asking if I had lemons or needed anything from the market. I said I had what I needed. She arrived at 4 and we sat for an hour without discussing accounts. She confirmed the Vermont dates and the budget. I made a note on my calendar and nothing under. MONEYA final letter arrived from the resort, noting that the donation banner for the wedding remained unchanged and that the file would archive after the retention period. I placed it in the wedding tab and closed the tab without adding anything else. The binder did not grow as quickly. It shifted from intake to maintenance. I reviewed the tabs and removed duplicates. I kept the exhibit list and the determination at the front, then the ledger page, then the declarations. Banking, housing, medical outreach, wedding, lending, arts. I made a new index card for the front with the dates of the few items that renewed at the end of the quarter. Miles made the first interest-only payment on time. The bank posted it the next day. I checked the account and marked paid on the schedule. He sent a copy of the stamped return for sales tax. He sent the payroll report. He kept the vendor invoices in order. He scheduled a small opening event for a Saturday with a poetry reading and coffee. The permit for sidewalk gathering allowed 15 chairs. He set out 12. Carter closed my file for active monitoring and kept it on his shelf. He said to call if any new access attempt occurred. The banknotes and utility code phrase remained in place. The doctor's letter sat under medical, undelivered to anyone. Jenna and Caleb set their fall dates and booked their own lodging. Miles posted the shop hours on the door and on a small website with the menu. The sign held its color after rain. The porch plant took the afternoon light. I checked the door camera each night and wrote down nothing because there was nothing to write. I filed the last of the receipts for the quarter and reconciled my accounts. The calendar stayed regular. The house stayed as it is. The binder stood upright on its own. Trust is warm, but logs are cold. I kept both where they belong.